Hello and welcome to this lecture on Earth's biomes. This is a section from chapter 5 in the text. Biomes are terrestrial regions inhabited by certain types of life, especially vegetation. So they're characterized by the type of vegetation that grows there. Examples include various types of deserts, grasslands, and forests. When you think of biomes, you can think of that they're really large ecosystems. Okay, let's take just a quick little virtual field trip here, and we'll start from Cloquet at the college. And the area around Cloquet and Duluth is kind of a transition zone between. Where's my cursor? Transition zone between the temperate deciduous forest to the south, right, this whole area, and the boreal forest to the north. So if we go north from Cloquet, we'll leave the temperate deciduous forest and we'll get into the boreal forest. And continually traveling, we'll end up in an area of tundra, right, in the very north. Again, if we go the other direction, we go west from Cloquet, we'll go into the big prairies, the temperate grasslands, all the way till we get to this area of mountains, and then we come into an area here of temperate rainforests on the west coast. South from there, we end up in Chaparral, right here, and then a fairly large area of desert as we go south. On the other end, we've got some mountains again, and then we get some, as you go into Mexico and Central America, on the west coast here, you've got tropical dry forest, and on the east coast, you've got areas of tropical forest. You see those same ecosystems into South America. At the equator, there are sort of three large areas of tropical rainforest here: the Amazonian, there's the African area here, continent of Africa, and then Indonesia. When we think about what causes a certain biome to grow in a certain area, it really comes down to two main factors, and that is the temperature in that area. Is it hot or cold or in between? And the precipitation, dry, moderate, or wet. So these two factors, when you think about an area over the course of a year or over many years, the temperature and the precipitation create the climate, right, for the plants to grow, and so plants are adapted to specific climates and grow best and compete best in certain climates. We're now going to take a look at each of the 10 ecosystems, starting with some of the temperate ecosystems and then moving into the tropical and the desert and etc. And for each, we'll look at a few of the characteristics of the climate of that area, a little bit about the biology, and a few other factors. Okay, we'll start out with temperate deciduous forest, and here's for each of them there'll be an image, and you can see an image. Something looks pretty familiar to you probably, of a temperate deciduous forest. And then below is a graph. It's called a climatograph. And the graph has, on the x-axis, it has the time of year, the month. Okay? And then plotted are the mean or average monthly temperature in the red line here. And in blue is the mean or monthly average precipitation. Okay? And there are two scales. This is the scale for temperature here, and it's in Celsius. Okay? And this is the scale for precipitation, average precipitation for each month, and it's in millimeters. Okay, this particular each of these is based on a particular site. This is in Washington, D.C. in the U.S. Okay, so you can see that the temperature is moderate in a temperate deciduous forest, and that's what that word temperate means. It means a moderate temperature. Okay, so it's not super warm, it's not super cold, it's kind of in between. The precipitation, right, is stable throughout the year. So we can see here Look at the precipitation, it's pretty stable. It's probably averaging around somewhere around 90 millimeters of rain throughout the course of the year, right, each month. Now, temperate deciduous forest, the term deciduous means to lose your leaves, right? So a tree that's deciduous loses its leaves in the fall, in this case, and it's dormant throughout the winter. Okay, so it closes down, no growth, uh, no photosynthesis, just kind of a state of suspended animation during that time. We see these forests in North America and in Europe and China, and you can go back and look at that map and kind of get a sense of the distribution of the temperate deciduous forest. Now, as you go to each of those places, right, North America, Europe, and China, you're going to see different. The ecosystems look very similar, but the species that are there will be different, right? There could be different. In North America, you can see a lot of specific types of oaks and maples, etc. Those might not be the same species that you see in China, but they'll be deciduous and they'll look the same, and they'll are adapted similarly to the trees that we see here. The second ecosystem is the temperate grassland. Again, you can see an image here. Temperate grasslands associated with large grazing mammals like the bison, and down below we can see the climatograph again, and it's a little bit different than the last one. We can see that the temperature is moderate, right, throughout the year. It's a little warmer in some cases. This is Odessa, Ukraine, but it's temperate. Okay, the precipitation is sparse though, and it's fairly stable in most of these ecosystems, right? But with a little peak here, but it's stable. It's much sparser. Look at the average precipitation here is more around 40 millimeters a year, and there are 2 times during the year where, in this particular graph, where the red line gets above the blue line, the temperature line gets above the precipitation line, and that denotes dry conditions. Okay. And so this area, because it gets less precipitation, you see very few trees and you see dominant grasses in these areas. Of course, you see the large grazing animals and mammals like the bison. And in North America, we have 2 sort of main types of temperate grasslands. There's the tall grass prairies, which are a little wetter, and these have some of those really tall grasses like the big blue stem, etc. And we have the more drought-resistant short grass prairie. It's going to be a little more drier. Now, one thing about the temperate grasslands, right, as you think about them, as we move westward from the temperate deciduous forest and come into the temperate grasslands, this is a very large ecosystem or biome, but very little is left, right? So much of it has been converted to agriculture. It's good soil, very good growing conditions, right? Temperatures, especially if you can add some water, right? If you can irrigate, especially in the area of the shortgrass prairie, you can have a lot of success. The temperate rainforest is found in the Pacific Northwest and in areas of Japan. And you can see an image here of the temperate rainforest. It's just a very, very full of life, very green area. Everything's growing. Here's a climatograph from Nagasaki, Japan, and you can see that the temperature is moderate, so it's temperate, but there is a lot of rain, much higher average rainfall in these areas than we see in the other ecosystems. And because of that, we see some very large trees, like the sequoias and the redwoods, some of the largest on the planet, and also see that it's because of the growth of these trees, they can be a pretty dark and very wet or moist forest interior. The tropical rainforest is found in regions near the equator and is characterized by, as you can see, extremely stable and high rainfall. So every month of the year is getting a lot of rain in this indication from this climatograph from Indonesia. and the temperature is warm and stable throughout the year. There's very little change there's no seasons per se in the tropical rainforest, right? So rainy and warm. As you know, the trees are really tall here, and the forest, there's often a canopy, right, a closed canopy, so that it's very dark and wet in the forest floor, right? So not much light, difficult to grow there because of the closed canopy of the trees. Uh, these equatorial forests, of course, have very high biodiversity, some of the most highest biodiversity on the planet. So many different kinds of species live there. The 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 soil itself is very weathered. It's very ancient, and it's very low in organic matter. So almost all of the organic matter is in the plants, the living plants up in the forest, and so the soil is pretty poor, and agriculture is pretty minimal there. When we see the slash and burn agriculture, what happens is you get the nutrients from the trees and plants, and and the soil will be productive for a little while, but it won't last. It's not a very rich soil. The tropical dry forest. Um, these are drier tropical areas across stretches of Africa, South America, Australia, and India. Um, and they're warm year round, right? But rainfall is lower overall, okay, and highly seasonal. So look at the temperature is very stable. I can't find my here. It's very warm, but there are two areas here where on each end where it gets very dry, and then a rainy area in the middle, very heavy rains. And so what will happen is the trees, as you go into the area here in Darwin, Australia here, in late May, the trees will lose their leaves, they'll become deciduous, and they will then bud out again right around, October or something, and grow during that rainy season. And essentially this is like a monsoon kind of season. Savannas are warm areas, right, with interspersed trees, right? So you get these grasslands that are dappled with scattered clumps of trees, and again, kind of a similar kind of outlook as as far as the climatograph as the tropical dry forest looks very similar. The precipitation is again highly seasonally variable, right, and the temperature stays very stable. This is an area where we think of these large herds of grazing animals, the zebras and the gazelles and the giraffes, and then their predators, the lions, the hyenas, and cheetahs, etc. And of course the water holes that are there that all the animals are coming to during that dry time, and see a lot of nature shows on that. Deserts. Deserts are biomes that are characterized by their lack of precipitation, right? Very dry, and that lack of precipitation limits the plant growth. And there are deserts that are both temperate and there are subtropical deserts. So here's an image of a pretty lush desert. Looks like the Sonoran Desert. And here is the climatograph, and you can see that it's in Cairo, it's fairly warm throughout the year, and but very little precipitation. Two kind of spurts of rain in these months, and then an area in the middle where there really is no rain. And so all the organisms that live in these environments have to be well adapted to surviving in these harsh and dry conditions, and they have ways of storing water or gathering water and protecting their water, and are dependent on those periods of rain to get them through the year. The tundra is a northern environment, right, where you have very long, harsh winters and short summers. You don't have much precipitation, and these are, we see these across Canada and Scandinavia and Russia. This is the area where you, at this time of year right now, I'm recording this in June, mid-June. These are areas where the sun will shine basically all 24 hours, right? It'll get low on the horizon, but it won't never go down. So we call it land of the midnight sun. And then vice versa in the winter, these are areas which have very, very short daylight. Um, they're characterized by a short summer growing season, but that growing season, one of the things about it is that there's the soil stays frozen. So it's only the very top part of the soil that thaws. It's kind of this waterlogged soil, and below that is what's called permafrost, right? Permanently frozen soil that never melts. And so because of that, we see very low vegetation, as you can see in this image. And if there's trees, they're small, a foot or two high, because the roots just can't penetrate deep into the soil. You may think of some of the animals that live in these areas, things like organisms like polar bears and musk oxen and caribou and lemmings and voles, and there's also a lot of insects in the summertime there, and several dozen species of birds that migrate there to nest. The boreal forest is just south, essentially, of the tundra, and this is an ecosystem that is also characterized by long winters and short summers and cool temperatures and fairly low precipitation. The trees are coniferous, meaning that they are evergreen and they have cones, and that they are trees like white and black spruce and balsam fir, and they're well adapted to making it through the winter and not losing too much water through the leaves. So the leaves are adapted to preserving the water that they have. And last, we have the chaparral. Here's an image, and then down here is a climatograph. This is from Los Angeles, and temperature is very seasonally variable here, but you do have that seasonally variable precipitation as well, right? So you have a lot of rain, or some rain in the rainy season, and then a very dry time again. And we see in these ecosystems, we see a lot of evergreen shrubs, right, which again are adapted to not losing water. And we see a lot of resistant plants that are resistant to fire, because fire is a very dominant force, and this ecosystem burns very frequently. And as you probably know, right, that makes for problems when it occurs in a place like Los Angeles, right, where there's so many people living in those areas. The plants then are both fire tolerant, right, meaning that they can, or resistant, meaning they can survive a fire. But many of the plants are also fire adapted, right? They need that fire to grow. And so you think of a fire that occurs in the fall after the long dry season, that creates nutrients in the soil, and then following that, right, is this rainy season that starts, or the rains come, and those seeds that have been able to survive the fire, and the parts of the plant that was underground that survived the fire, then can really take off and grow at that point. And that concludes our discussion of biomes. And thanks for listening.